This is a special shut-in for coronavirus episode of my show where I tell comic book stories. Here in St. Louis, there is no statewide order as of yet, but we're behaving as if there is. I'm off work for the time being. Some businesses like GameStop are shut down. The buses are on a slower schedule and everyone only uses the back door to get on and off. Also, they're free, so no one's going up to the pay box to protect the drivers. The streets are mostly empty, and it felt like time to read an old favorite Batman story from 1996, Contagion. I love when everything turns to chaos and Batman is put to the greatest test trying to control his city in impossible situations. I also thought since I have this time off that I'd share it with all of you as it's never been adapted in any form. Batman Contagion tells the story of Gotham succumbing to the outbreak of a deadly virus, very likely inspired by the popularity of films like Outbreak from 1995, which was more popular than normal due to a real-life outbreak of Ebola in Zaire, which happened during the film's release. The virus in Contagion is known as the Apocalypse virus, or Ebola Gulf A. I just wanted to provide a little context before we begin the story and show where the inspiration likely came from. I'll provide background information on the world of Batman at the time as we go. Let's begin. Contagion Part 1 begins with Azrael informing Batman of a virus supposedly headed for Gotham, and he shows him a videotape taken from the Order of St. Dumas in Africa. Azrael was the person Batman chose to fill in for him after his back was broken in Knightfall, and he was programmed with fighting skills hypnotically by the Order of St. Dumas, to which his father had belonged and served them as their avenging angel, Azrael. Jean-Paul Valley's Azrael is the identity he returned to after going a little insane as Batman and being deposed by Bruce's return. By this time, he was an agent of the Bat, usually working in foreign countries rather than Gotham City. The videotape shows a man in the throes of a deadly plague, eyes bleeding, body distended, and nearing death. A group of men in protective suits attempt to calm him, but fail, and one of the team becomes infected by an attack on another member when his suit is punctured. Rather than face the effects of the virus, he shoots himself in the head, and the tape ends. Azrael tells Bruce that he has no other information that an infected man is headed for Gotham. We see that man arriving by plane, believing himself to only have a cold or the flu. Robin has tracked the only plane arriving from Africa to a private airstrip, and is tracking the helicopter the passengers are transferred to, while Batman heads for a nearby military base to retrieve information on the virus. Patient Zero, Daniel Maris, arrives by helicopter at an enclosed apartment complex for Gotham's elite, Babylon Towers. It is completely closed off from the outside world. As he exits the helicopter, he sneezes on the pilot. Batman sneaks into the military base, easily avoiding security systems and patrols, and finds the chemical research lab's quarantine section. Donning heavy protective gear, he finds a man inside suffering from the virus. General Derwent was performing research on the virus, and he explains its effects to Batman. After 48 hours of flu-like symptoms, during which the virus spreads through airborne mucus, the patient will begin to bleed from the eyes, and the muscles will desiccate, shrinking and deforming them, until eventually the pressure breaks the victim's bones apart, the strain becoming too much for the skeleton to sustain. It has thus been given the nickname the Clench. The general tells him the virus mutates too fast, that there is no cure, that the only chance would be to find a survivor and make a cure from the antibodies in their blood. At that moment, Daniel Maris is also explaining the effects of the virus to the board of Babylon Towers. He explains the virus is on its way to Gotham, and he tells them that within days it will be chaos and bodies filling the streets, but they can stay safe if they close down the towers and wait it out. The board votes to do so. The general tells Batman that unless he can find a survivor, all of Gotham will share his fate, and he dies. Meanwhile, the pilot is heading home from work, carrying the virus to his family and spreading it along the way, as Part 1 comes to a close. I've decided to include all the covers for this series, as most of them are really neat variations on a theme of Batman fighting disease. Part 2 begins with Batman's escape from the military installation. He even shows himself to the guards so they'll know it was just him breaking in, and he easily deals with them with minimal violence, and escapes over the razor wire fence. Batman and Robin have tracked the plane passenger to Babylon Towers and climbed the outside of the building to listen in on what's happening within. Inside, Daniel Maris is succumbing to the disease, blood leaking from his eyes. He remarks that he came to warn them, not knowing that he was their agent of infection. He tells them that during an outbreak in Greenland there was one lone survivor, and that finding him is now their only chance to survive. Batman relays this to Barbara Gordon, who used to be Batgirl until Joker shattered her spine, but who continues to fight crime as the ultimate superhero information resource and hacker, Oracle. She tells Batman of an outbreak in an isolated fishing village that killed everyone there. The World Health Organization was unable to even use the bodies for research, because the virus died with the hosts. He tells her that there was one survivor and they need to find that person, because there's been an outbreak in Gotham. The residents of Babylon Towers have pooled their considerable resources and offered it to the Penguin if he and his men can find the sole survivor and deliver them. The Penguin, ever the opportunist, accepts the offer, but plans that once he has the prize, he intends to extort as much as he can out of them. Daniel Maris dies as the disease spread, both inside Babylon Towers and in Gotham beyond. Family members unknowingly infect friends and neighbors. No one is safe. Oracle contacts Batman with the identity of the survivor, Kendall Stewart, a resident of Toronto, Canada. Batman tells Robin to take Alfred in the Batplane and go and get him. And this shows the great amount of trust Batman places in Tim Drake. He can trust Robin to take care of this essential task as well as he could, and it allows Batman to stay where he knows he'll be needed in Gotham itself. And this is far from the most Alfred has been asked to do. Batman certainly earns his paycheck. Robin arrives only to find not Kendall Stewart but Catwoman lying in wait as Part 2 comes to a close. A word about how these stories were told before we continue. It's not like a story where every part is laid out according to the plot and all the characters appear in every episode like TV usually works. In comics at the time, there was a Bat family of monthly comic books all being related to each other, such as Batman, a detective comic starring Batman, then Robin had his own book, as did Catwoman, and so did Azrael, and when a big event happened, each book would become a chapter in a larger story, the story meandering from character to character depending on who starred in each book and what book came out when. This was good because you'd usually get at least one chapter each week, as books came out on a weekly basis. It'll all come together by the end. Catwoman attempts to whip Robin, who dodges quickly. He tells her that Kendall Stewart may be the cure to the outbreak of plague in Gotham. Selina responds that there's also a huge reward for him. He flips across the room and catches her whip with his staff, then uses it to pull himself into a jumping kick at Selina, knocking her down. He then flips a couch on top of her so he can reason with her. Robin realizes that Catwoman doesn't have Stewart and proposes that they work together to find him. Meanwhile, at a gas station somewhere in Gotham, Ebola Gulf A continues to spread as an attendant sneezes on a Coast Guard worker. The public remains completely unaware of the outbreak. Batman threatens the Penguin, admonishing him for selling the cure to the highest bidder. Penguin says that it's survival of the fittest and that it's too late to call back his operative. The army is locking down Gotham Mercy General Hospital, while outside a news crew questions why the army is invading the hospital. Meanwhile, Detective Renee Montoya greets her boyfriend in the Coast Guard and notices blood in his eyes. Robin and Catwoman set off to find Kendall Stewart in his remote mountain cabin. Robin has told Alfred who he's working with, but has asked him not to tell Bruce just yet, while at the same time Batman is making his own unlikely alliance with Azrael. The two aren't exactly enemies, they aren't exactly on good terms either. Still, Batman asks Azrael to go and watch over Robin on his quest to find the sole survivor and hopefully a cure. Robin and Catwoman arrive at the cabin and find Kendall Stewart, but before they can even explain what's going on, they are ambushed by Penguin's henchmen. Before he can make good his escape, though, Azrael makes his entrance. You'll notice Batman was largely absent from that last chapter, as it was Robin's book. He only appeared on 2 pages. You'll notice the trend continues as we move into Catwoman's book. These covers of the non-Batman books are often more literal and less symbolic. Azrael confronts Tracker, Penguin's mercenary, while Robin and Catwoman recover. Azrael narrowly saves Kendall from being shot and blocks Tracker's bullets with his flaming sword. Catwoman kicks him in the face. Azrael blasts flames from his gauntlet, setting the cabin on fire. Robin tells Azrael that Catwoman is on their side as he pushes Kendall out into the snow. Azrael hasn't listened to Robin though, and he and Catwoman continue to fight inside the burning cabin. Tracker engages them both as timbers fall around them. Outside, Robin tries to get Kendall into a snowmobile, but it explodes. Armed men on skis are attacking the cabin, firing it at everyone on the scene. Everyone inside takes cover from the gunfire while Robin and Kendall make for the trees. Robin acrobatically takes out some of the thugs, leaping between trees and using his staff, flipping to dodge bullets. This flipping to dodge bullets trick is extremely common in Batman comic books. Azrael, Catwoman, and Tracker all burst from the cabin, returning fire. Azrael uses the flames from his gauntlets, Tracker has a gun, and Catwoman uses a line with a claw on it. They question the armed men. The men tell them nothing though, as they use cyanide capsules to kill themselves. The three momentary allies take a nearby vehicle and head after Kendall and Robin. Robin and Kendall are trying to cross a frozen river under fire from two thugs. Robin uses a bat rope to pull down a branch and incapacitate one of them, but the other manages to shoot and kill Kendall Stewart. Kendall tells Robin before he dies that he wasn't the only survivor of the plague in the fishing village. He says that two other survivors also left that place before help came. Catwoman knocks out Tracker, and she and Azrael take the truck. Robin takes a sample of Kendall's blood in case it can be of any use. Robin arrives late and Azrael chooses not to tell him about the other two survivors, intending to protect him from further danger. Robin and Alfred fly back to Gotham with the blood sample, and Batman consoles Robin that he was given an impossible task, and not to feel like he failed. Batman also tells him the outbreak has hit the media and that Gotham has been sealed off. Part 4 ends with Renee Montoya and Harvey Bullock of the GCPD finding Renee's Coast Guard boyfriend dead from the virus. The issue opens with a story being told about the fishing village the survivors are from being read from the diary of Kendall Stewart. Kendall tells of the plague killing everyone around them while he prevents a gangster named Fong from leaving and spreading the virus. But Fong overtook him as sleep came, and escaped. Kendall tells of one other survivor leaving, a woman named Leonore, while every other person in the village was dead from the apocalypse virus. Azrael calls Oracle for information on Fong after finishing Kendall's diary, and Catwoman suggests that they catch a nap while they wait, while wondering aloud who Azrael is talking to. Oracle is a resource for heroes, so Catwoman, more often than not a member of the criminal fraternity, wouldn't know about her. But this marks one of the times, though, where Catwoman's more on the side of the heroes. She has her own unique morality. You can't properly call her a villain or a hero all the time. While they sleep, Tracker finds them and ambushes Catwoman. Azrael throws him off of her. Azrael attacks with his gauntlet's flaming sword, and Tracker defends with his knife until Catwoman stops the fight. The three agree that they should join forces for the time being, as Fong will have an army of guns and they'll need each other to reach him. Catwoman and Tracker agree to split the bounty. Azrael tells them he has Fong's location. Fong is indeed surrounded by an army of guns, and since surviving the virus, he has come to believe he is invincible. He slices into his arm before his henchmen to demonstrate his strength, saying he feels nothing. Azrael, Catwoman, and Tracker parachute down onto Fong's yacht. Azrael is accosted by three armed men, and one of them pistol whips the back of his head. Azrael spins and kicks him, unharmed due to his armored helmet, and leaps, dodging gunfire. From inside a lifeboat, he grabs one of the henchmen and throws him into the other one. He swings down and finishes him off with a kick. The three meet up, having taken care of all the guards on deck. They confront Fong, who, after making a speech about his invincibility, attempts to prove it, and kills himself by stabbing himself in the heart. As the issue ends, our heroes are crestfallen, fearing that Gotham may die along with Fong. This is a very evocative cover, showing Batman unable to help the stricken people of Gotham as being held back by the Reaper. Part 6 begins with Robin telling Batman how he had to parachute into Gotham due to it being sealed, and evade the police guarding the river. Robin gives Batman the sample of Kendall Stewart's blood, and Batman begins working with it as he tells Robin how bad things have gotten in Gotham. He tells Robin that right now, real people are dying, but if this continues to spread, they will become mere statistics. He insists that they can't let death turn lives into numbers. Renee Montoya and Harvey Bullock watch the paramedics carrying away Renee's Coast Guard boyfriend, claimed by the virus. Renee seems to have been lucky and not contracted the disease herself, but she mourns his loss. The news reports that the hospitals are overwhelmed, but the CDC has been tracing the path of infection back to one or two alpha victims, all of whom were workers dismissed from Babylon Towers. Renee and Harvey discuss the possibility of a survivor, but the virus has a fatality rate over 90%, and it's doubtful one will be found within Babylon Towers. If there were a survivor, their antibodies would be much stronger inside their body, having been changed by the virus, but outside of the body, the antibodies, like the virus itself, would deteriorate rapidly, so that were the survivor to die from some other means, even recently taken blood might well be useless for the purpose of finding a cure. Meanwhile, Azrael is in the Batcave, giving Batman the blood he took from Fong, the second survivor. Catwoman and Tracker are hunting for the third. Azrael tells Batman that Fong was also dead when the sample was taken. He also tells him that someone tried to use the plague as a weapon in Greenland, and that whoever this was has set assassins on the Tracker's trail. Nightwing shows up at the cave to help. I think everyone knows who Nightwing is, but if you don't, Dick Grayson was the first Robin, and he led the Teen Titans. Nightwing is just his adult identity, which he took up to help him get out from under Batman's shadow. Batman has become so desperate that he has sought out help from Poison Ivy, whom he has asked to carry a vaccine he has created from the blood into Babylon Towers to test it. It's not a cure, it only grants potential immunity from the virus, but Poison Ivy is the only person who could survive the trip, her own body having a much higher than normal range of defenses against all kinds of diseases, due to the same condition that makes her toxic to the touch. Ivy agrees, but she may well have her own motivations, as she does not care much for human life. Outside of Babylon Towers, Gotham is rioting, and the police are nowhere in sight. Luckily, Robin and Nightwing are there. By sealing Babylon Towers, the people inside went into voluntary quarantine. It will be Nightwing and Robin's job to enforce it. Under the street, Batman helps Ivy make her way into Babylon Towers through the sewers, as Robin and Nightwing engage the rioters above. Robin pleads for sanity from the mob, but they literally spit in his face. He loses it and clocks a man with his staff. Commissioner Jim Gordon is not officially in charge, but his people ask him to lead them anyway. Robin and Nightwing have their backs against the wall when suddenly help appears in the form of Huntress. The Huntress is Helena Bertinelli, a daughter of the mob, turned into a weapon against them after her parents were claimed by mob violence. Below the street, Ivy has made it into the tower's basement. On the news, it is reported that some are calling for the bombing of Babylon Towers to try and cleanse the infection, and the governor may call in the National Guard to keep the rioting citizens from hurting themselves too much. Inside Babylon Towers, word is spread quickly that a woman has arrived with a cure, and everyone rushes to the conservatory. Huntress and the boys have their hands full with the angry mob out on the street, and now all three of them have their backs against the wall. Inside, Poison Ivy is claiming to have a cure and selling it to the highest bidder, while the heroes outside finally catch a break. The crowd stops dead as they see a familiar shadow on the wall. Batman tells them to disperse, and they instantly comply. Batman tells the other heroes that riots are breaking out everywhere, that these people will soon be back in greater numbers. There's a mob marching on City Hall to demand that the mayor bomb the towers. Batman plans to rally the Gotham police to help hold the towers for long enough to see if the vaccine works, and if it doesn't, then the entire city faces death. Batman and Commissioner Jim Gordon are the staunchest of allies in the war against Gotham's criminal underworld, but can even they face a city on the edge of the inferno? Part 7 begins with a writer inside Babylon Towers recording a message for his agent, telling the story of the outbreak. He laughs because his agent will make millions while he lies dead and rotting, because death sells. The writer muses to his agent about the similarity between his own situation and Poe's Mask of the Red Death, except that it backfired on them. In the conservatory, Poison Ivy is dispensing the vaccine to whoever brings her the most valuables. She kicks a man in the face for trying to give her credit card, insisting on things with real value. The writer gives her his $5 million advance check in exchange for a dose of the vaccine. On the streets of Gotham, it's open season for crime as the police are too busy to respond to alarms. Luckily, Batman isn't, and he, Nightwing, and Huntress quickly mop up the thugs who tried to rob a jewelry store, shielding themselves from bullets with a bulldozer. Batman was at a nearby lumberyard to get materials to barricade the streets leading to Babylon Towers. Inside, Ivy orders the resident to load up her Rolls Royce with her treasures. She continues giving out doses, but the writer sneezes, indicating that the vaccine may not work. Commissioner Gordon tries to hold the line against the angry mob of people who blame the rich people of Babylon Towers for the plague. He manages to convince the crowd to use their energy for good, to seek out the nearest hospital or police station and see how they can help. Thankfully, the crowd listens to him. Jim Gordon still commands a lot of respect in Gotham, for good reason. The crowd is turning on Ivy after finding out the vaccine doesn't work, but she keeps them on the hook by promising to share her own natural immunity and begins selling kisses, kissing the writer to prove she is indeed immune. To anyone who knows her, though, this is a lie, as her kiss is fatal. But desperate people will jump at any chance to survive, though, and her ploy works. Batman decides that he's waited long enough, and he prepares to enter Babylon Towers, although he has no protection against the virus. Gordon sees him entering and rushes to help. The writer has figured out that he's not going to survive after all, but sees no point in telling anyone the truth, figuring that she's only killing dead people anyway, and her method might even be kinder. As Batman enters through the sewers, Nightwing, Robin, and Huntress are trying to scatter a mob on the streets above. However, Robin faints, falling off the roof, and Nightwing and Huntress quickly rescue him. Batman tries to warn the crowd that poison ivy is lethal, but they are not thinking straight, and they attack him at her command. Outside, the heroes discover that Robin has been infected by the virus, as they find blood seeping out of his mask. Batman evades the angry men by swinging on a chandelier, grabbing Ivy, and admonishing her for using dying men to do her dirty work. He asks her if the vaccine worked, but she refuses to answer and kicks him off of her and takes a hostage. She tells him that she's glad the people are all going to die, that the plants will reclaim Gotham when they're gone. Jim Gordon saves the day by knocking her out with his gun. He tells Batman that he heard on the way that the vaccine was useless. He tells Batman that he both hates Gotham, the crime and the crowds and the filth and the corruption, but that he also loves Gotham, that it's a part of him, the way that it's a part of Batman, and that of all the regrets he's had in his life, he'll never regret that he and Batman fought in the same war. As Nightwing returns to the Batcave with Robin, Huntress is left alone against the mob. She is unable to stop them from setting fire to Babylon Towers. Part 7 ends with the writer wondering which is worse, the virus, the fire, or Poison Ivy's kiss. One or the other kills him, and his last words are that while he made fun of religion in his past books, he is praying to God now, but that he doesn't think that God cares. The cover to Part 8 shows Batman struggling against the people of Gotham themselves, while all of them try to stay alive in the grip of death as the city burns behind them. Nightwing arrives at the Batcave, carrying Robin and desperately calling for Alfred. Nightwing wants to tell Robin's father what has happened, but he doesn't know that Tim Drake is Robin, and Robin refuses to tell him while there's still a chance he could survive. Batman and Jim Gordon must now escape the burning apartment complex. The lower floors are on fire, so they must head upwards. Batman always has a plan, and he has brought a special bag to carry Ivy out in to avoid her poison touch. He knew it would come to this. Tim has been set up in the Batcave's medical facility, which is the equal of any hospital. Alfred has him on a nutrient feed and sedatives. Nightwing asks if there's anything he can do, but Alfred tells him all he can do is go and help Batman. Alfred is very experienced in patching up Batman. Tim Drake is in good hands. Batman and Gordon are stopped by a man with a gun who tells them that his wife has died, and with so many people dying he's afraid he won't be able to find her. He tells Gordon he's sending him ahead into death to find her and to tell her to wait for him. Diving quickly and drawing his gun, Gordon fires, killing the man with a headshot. Batman tries to comfort him, saying that he did him a favor and saved the man from an agonizing death. Gordon tells him that he'd know how wrong that was if he'd ever killed a man, that nothing makes it any easier. Gordon throws a chair out the window, and Batman asks Jim how much he trusts him. Gordon asks if he's joking. After all they've been through over the years, Jim Gordon probably trusts Batman more than anyone else in the world. Batman jumps out of the window, using a bat rope to descend to the ground with Ivy and Gordon in tow. Meanwhile, Oracle receives a call from someone unexpected. Catwoman hit redial after Azrael called her last time and saved the number. Oracle guesses who she is quickly, but agrees to help her this one time. Catwoman tells her there was a third survivor and gives her the name Leonora Wee. Oracle gives her a location and tells her the number she's using became inactive as of 2 minutes ago. Catwoman agrees it will be the first and last time. Gordon arrives on the ground at the towers, finding Bullock and Montoya. He asks where the other police are and finds out that they all went home to their families. He can't fault them for that. Renee asks him what they're going to do, and he responds that all they can do is watch it burn and bear witness. Speeding in the Batmobile, Batman asks Alfred for an update. Alfred tells him that Tim Drake doesn't have much time. Alfred suggests that Batman take his railway transport, but it's too late for that. Batman has to evade the National Guard and break through their roadblock to return to the Batcave, which lies outside of Gotham proper. He triggers the Batmobile's nitrous feed and leaves them far behind, the jet propulsion burning a trail in his wake. Part 8 ends with Batman telling Nightwing that they're fighting an enemy they can't see, that they can't lock up or keep out, and that by now everyone in Gotham knows someone who's been struck down. He tells them that they will all share the loss. We'll all be touched. Every one of us. The Batman Chronicles is an anthology book, telling short stories of characters in the Bat family. From this issue I'll highlight the stories of the Huntress and Robin, who has just contracted the virus and lies convalescing in the Batcave. This cover is a remake of a famous image from A Death in the Family, the story of the death of the second Robin, Jason Todd, from 1988. This part is not numbered, as its stories fit in different places in the overall story. The Huntress story follows her as she tries to track down a student from the school she works at as a teacher and her secret identity. His father was the pilot who carried Roger Maris to Babylon Towers. Eric's whole family is dead, but he's out there somewhere, alone, and the Huntress vows to find him. Follow her example, and if you go outside during this time, wear a mask. Huntress thinks of the irony that she puts her entire school in danger simply by being there, knowing that her mob enemies wouldn't hesitate to strike at her there, but now she's worried about the danger young Eric is in. Making her way into the school, she calls every parent in her address book, but she is attacked by an infected man and her arm is sliced open. Thankfully, a man in medical gear helps her, shooting her attacker before she has to kill him herself. She bandages her arm and takes off, unwilling even now to claim the title of a good guy. She often kills the mobsters she fights, which is why Batman doesn't approve of her methods. She operates in Gotham, but she's not a member of the Bat family, just one more unlikely ally in a crisis. Huntress realizes that since Eric's home wasn't safe, he might go to the next safest place he knew, his dad's work. He was a pilot, and the boy loved to fly with him whenever he could. She swings down to the helipad of Babylon Towers, meaning this must have taken place before the fire, and quickly deals with the guards posted there, barricading the roof, shooting some with her crossbow and punching the rest. Her arm patch is torn off, but there's nothing she can do about it now. Huntress runs as she hears cries coming from the helicopter. She rushes to the door, but what she finds there stops her cold. Eric has already been infected with the Apocalypse virus. Huntress backs away, and Batman tells her that until a cure is found, there's nothing either of them can do to help people, and that there's a price for even trying. Robin lies in the Batcave's hospital facility, asking Alfred if the lights are off. Alfred tells him that they are not. Alfred thought it best to bandage Tim's eyes because of the blood-filled tears. He asks if there's anything he can do to make Tim more comfortable, but Tim is only worried about Batman. Alfred leaves to attend a few things upstairs, and Tim dozes off. He wakes with a start as his father, Jack Drake, awakens him. Jack doesn't know he's Robin, or at least he didn't used to. Jack tells his son that Bruce had to tell him with everything that's going on, and it explains a lot, such as his odd disappearances. Jack tells Tim that it's okay, he understands, and that he's proud of him. Tim feels weird dressing in his Robin costume in front of his dad, as he's never seen him in it. He tells him he can keep on being Robin, but that as his father he'd like a little input, and that Bruce agrees. Bruce is in the kitchen with Alfred, wearing his Batman costume but no mask, and tells Tim it's best if he spends some time growing up, and less time fighting criminals. He gives Robin some time off, and Jack walks his son out to the yard for his next surprise. It's Ariana, Tim Drake's girlfriend, who also didn't know he was Robin. She hugs him and tells him she's fine with it too. She thinks it's cool. Jack Drake tells his son that he can smell dinner and they should go in. It's roast lamb, potatoes, and apple cobbler, a meal he hasn't had since his mother died. Tim gets to the house, and there's his mother. He runs and hugs her, telling her that he loves her, and he thought he'd never see her again. He tells her that he has so much to tell her, as the world fades away. Robin awakens in the Batcave and asks Alfred if the lights are off. Alfred tells Tim he thought it was best to bandage his eyes. This cover shows Batman mourning the thousands of dead Gothamites and a sign proclaiming Gotham the city of the dead. Part 9 begins with Catwoman locking Tracker in the trunk of a rental car at the airport. Catwoman plans to find the third survivor herself and claim the entire bounty. She puts Tracker to sleep and locks him in. A quick change to Selina Kyle, and a plane ticket later, Catwoman is headed for Florida. Tracker wakes up and manages to bargain his way out of the trunk, promising $1,000 to a passerby. Catwoman has found Leonard, the third survivor, but she is soon kidnapped as collateral by some drug dealers. Exiting via the roof, she pays a cab driver to follow them. Riding on the roof is thrilling but disorienting. The dealers arrive at a rundown, boarded-up store. Catwoman tries to enter through the roof, but in Florida there are far less skylights than in Gotham. Catwoman interrupts the gangster Tito's speech and flips to dodge the incoming gunfire. She jump kicks one henchman into two others, and they bring a wall of TV sets toppling down on them. Tito takes Leonard hostage. Catwoman tells him she's worth a lot of money alive and nothing dead. He doesn't believe her or his victim, though, so Catwoman takes him down by firing her grappling claw into his head. Catwoman encourages Tito to help her and Leonard get to Gotham by putting him in a washing machine and running it for a while. He is soon convinced, and the two fly back to Gotham soon after. Catwoman gets to know Leonard a bit on the way. Back in Gotham, Catwoman finds that Babylon Towers is burned to the ground, and figures her reward is history. When Tracker tries to ambush her, she gives Leonard to him, but upon hearing that Penguin will make good on the bounty, she changes her mind. She tells Tracker that she sabotaged his guns before leaving him. She takes him down with her whip, pulling him in by the neck for a jumping kick. She heads for Penguin with the girl in tow. Penguin's place is deserted, however, except for a familiar gravelly voice from the shadows telling her that he's out of business. Catwoman gives up her prize right away, telling her she's going to be okay, that he only wants a sample of her blood to make an antivirus. Part 9 ends with Batman stepping out of the shadows and telling them that it's too late for that. Too late for Gotham. The blood of survivors is not a source of a cure or a vaccine to Ebola Gulf A. They have all failed. The cover of Azrael here shows Jean Paul grieving for Tim Drake, who helped train him along with Batman when he became Azrael, and who served his version of Batman as Robin. But more important is the symbol that Robin's body lies upon, as we'll see in this issue. Part 10 begins with Batman telling Catwoman that Gotham is doomed. He tells Leonard that she didn't survive the plague, neither did the others from the fishing village. They have a natural immunity, so they never contracted the virus to begin with. There are no antibodies in their blood. Nightwing says that a few hundred Gothamites might have a natural immunity as well. A few hundred out of 7.5 million people, says Batman. Robin lies in the Batcave awaiting death. He only has hours left to live. He asks Alfred to tell his father that he was Robin, that he's sorry, and that he doesn't love Bruce more than him. Alfred promises to do so and tells Tim to get some rest. The National Guard is stationed at every bridge and road out of Gotham, the city under martial law. Jean Paul Valley and his supporting cast are watching the news when they happen to see a visualization of the virus on TV. Jean Paul recognizes the symbol from the Order of Saint Dumas. He saw it on the wall of a laboratory in Africa held by the Order. The three suspect they may be responsible. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of the Order of Saint Dumas, an underling is being disciplined for having released the virus by infecting Roger Maris and sending him to Gotham. It seems he exceeded his orders, and he pays for it with his life. The leader deduces that Azrael must have taken writings from the laboratory in Africa, and orders his men in America to strike. Azrael and his friends are digging through the writings when they discover a reference to a terrible sickness. Luckily, one of them knows how to decode the ancient language. Back in Gotham, Batman tells Catwoman that while they're still enemies, he's letting her go this time, the crime she commits being insignificant compared to the horror in the streets. Catwoman says that she and Leonard are going to do what they can to help the sick, that after everything she's done, she'll die a good guy. Batman says that he hopes she won't suffer much if the worst happens. Robin is going through that worst case scenario at that moment. Alfred grieves for him, for himself, for Batman and his allies, for the Gotham police force, for the most formidable force he has ever known, all helpless against the threat this time. But Azrael's allies have found the cure at last. Common ingredients combined by a science mostly forgotten by modern men, but possible to synthesize given this information. The Order had plans to cleanse the earth of non-believers and sinners, only giving the antidote to their followers. Azrael races off to Gotham to storm the blockade and deliver the cure before his friends can tell him that what he's about to do is pointless. The Order's men attack him on his way to his car, but Azrael makes quick work of them with his flaming swords. Azrael calls from the car phone to tell his friends that there are men outside who mean them harm as he speeds away toward Gotham. He hangs up before they can tell him anything. Azrael's car races towards the roadblock with him riding on the hood. As it smashes into a barricade, he leaps over the National Guardsman. He dives into the river, surfacing on the other side. A homeless man asks him if he is the Angel of Death. Azrael responds that while that's who he has been, he hopes that now he's the Angel of Life. Azrael bursts into the emergency room of the first hospital he sees and hands a doctor a paper containing the cure to Ebola Gulf A, the Apocalypse virus. Back at the Batcave, Nightwing rushes to Alfred to tell him the good news. He has a cure that's been in use at Gotham Medical Hospital since that morning with a 100% success rate. He says they should have everything they need in the cave, that they'll have Robin on his feet in no time. He finds Robin's bed empty, though, and Alfred tells him that it is too late, as Part 10 ends. This final cover shows Robin grappling with the specter of death, a visualization of what he's been going through with the virus. As Part 11 begins, Alfred is telling Nightwing that it's too late for the cure to do Tim Drake any good. From off-panel, a voice tells him that that was in poor taste. It's too late for the cure to do him any good because he's already taken it, and he's doing fine. Comics love to pull cheap tricks like this. It's all about the suspense. That last issue, all the covers foreshadowing Robin's death, all shameless misdirection. It's all part of the show, folks. It seems that Azrael's mission was indeed pointless, as, with his medieval thinking, he didn't realize that his friends could fax the cure to Gotham hospitals as well as Wayne Tech far faster than he could deliver it by hand. Despite the cure being distributed to all the sick people of Gotham, there's still general anarchy and the city is under martial law. Batman and Nightwing head out to corral the chaos, and Tim plans to go to bed for about a month. However, a priority email comes through on the Bat computer. Tim knows that he should ignore it, but he checks, and learns that a gang is holding a neighborhood hostage with snipers and not letting the cure be delivered. With people dying every second, Robin knows that he is needed. He suits up and heads out in the Redbird. On the way, he calls his father and his girlfriend to let them know that he's okay. He says he was out of contact because the power went out at Bruce's house and he was stuck outside of Gotham by the quarantine. He thinks to himself how much he hates having to lie to the people he loves, but he knows that he must to keep them safe. Robin makes his entrance to Gotham by way of a maintenance walk under a bridge that the National Guard don't know about. He plans to hang back and pace himself unless he's really needed. The new mayor has taken office and reinstated Jim Gordon as police commissioner. Now officially back in charge, he listens as gang members give their demands via bullhorn. The gang members also opened fire on the police below, demanding cash for the lives of everyone in the neighborhood. While inside the houses, families are slowly dying of the plague, wondering when help will come. With the city broken in chaos, there's no chance of paying the ransom. Gordon must use force, but maybe Robin can prevent that. He just needs to rest his eyes for a moment. He is awoken by Catwoman, who has toyed with the idea of ripping off the ransom, but has decided that creeps like these guys give criminals a bad name, so she's here to help. Besides, she's been a good girl the past few days. Catwoman leaps into action, telling Robin to stay behind. He knows he can't let her handle this alone, though, so he swings into action as well. He crashes through a window and collapses at gunpoint. Catwoman whips both men by the neck, making them drop their guns, and knocks one out with a knee. She helps Robin to his feet and asks what's wrong with him. Robin tells her that he had the clench, but that he got the cure and he's recovering now. He tells her that that doesn't matter though, that every minute people are dying and he wasn't going to sit by while that happened. Catwoman tells him that she'd always wondered why Batman took on a partner, until now. He offers to put in a good word for her, and she tells him not to dare, that she has her reputation to think of. Robin and Catwoman mop up the thugs, as Robin thinks that he's keeping bad company for the second time in a week, should watch his own reputation. As our story comes to a close, Robin thinks that this latest disaster has made for some strange alliances, and that for all of the bad, some good came out of it as well. We all found some strength that we never knew we had, and for just one day, life seemed more precious than ever before. But tomorrow, it'll all be back to normal. Nothing ever really changes. Well, let's all hope for that return to normalcy for our own world, too. We'll have a cure or a vaccine eventually, and this will become just another period of history to be learned from. It may get worse before it gets better, but one day, it will get better. Let's make sure we learn the right lessons from this, to keep each other close and take care of each other, because the only way to handle any crisis is together. Stay safe out there, and thank you for your time.